He's pathetic. He's small. He's a whiner. We all know that. You wouldn't have him babysit your kids. You wouldn't hire him if you had a small business. You want that man in your business? There's no way. But you're going to vote for him for president because he's strong? I mean, Kamala Harris whipped his ass in the debate, just obviously, and he's running ever since. He doesn't want any part of her. All he can do is cut people down, and do what he does. We've all seen all that kind of stuff. Do they not know that they have children and grandchildren probably that are going to lose freedom if this guy is elected?
What the hell is he talking about? Why are we doing this with Grandpa Gregg again? How many times at the beginning of an NBA season are we going to have to sit through another painfully boring lecture from Gregg Popovich? Another painfully boring lecture that has absolutely nothing to do with basketball. First of all, Gregg with 2 G's, which, by the way, you know why there are 2 G's in Gregg instead of the usual 1? Greggy, he gave himself 2 G's just in case he lost one of them. Poor Gregg, he loses things all the time. Lost his mind. He's lost the ability to win games in the NBA. Hasn't lost one of the G's yet, but if they lose the G in LGBT, I'm sure the Gregster won't mind letting them borrow one of his. I'm not going to sit here and put all the blame on Gregg Popovich for his unhinged rant on Donald Trump this weekend. This unhinged rant, it lasted over 13 minutes. 13 minutes? Really? I don't want to listen to Gregg Popovich for 13 seconds, but look, it is not all his fault. In his defense, he was asked a question and he gave an answer. Now, who asked an NBA head coach about their thoughts on the upcoming presidential election? I'll give you a hint. It was not a fan of the San Antonio Spurs. The only question they're asking Gregg Popovich is, how come you can't win basketball games? How come you can't make the playoffs? Why have you been a huge, embarrassing failure for the last 4 or 5 years? Now, imagine my surprise. Just imagine my surprise when I found out that a doofus member of the woke media presented this question to Gregg Popovich. For years now, the Spurs have done absolutely nothing but embrace the suck, and the media's asking Captain Doofus what he thinks about Donald Trump? If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. If you happen to stumble across this video, be sure to check out my main channel, Behind the Line. Search Behind the Line here on YouTube. Should be the first channel that comes up. You know what Gregg Popovich reminds me of? Gregg Popovich reminds me of that guy. When I was in my 20s, we used to label dudes that guy who were in their 30s, maybe even their 40s, and they just refused to grow up. They were 30, 35 years old, and they were still going to quarter well drink night at the bar on Wednesday nights to hang out with the college kids. Now, because of what he does for a living, Gregg Popovich, he is around young men in their early 20s every day. He's older than Methuselah. When Gregg Popovich was born, his social security number, it was 2. The only reason it wasn't 1 is because Johnny B. Biden, he was born a day earlier. Now, part of me thinks that Gregg Popovich goes on these unhinged rants against Columbus Day, or in this case, the Trumper. Part of me thinks that he goes on these rants as a way to relate to kids who refer to him as great-great-great-great-grandpa Pop. Whatever the reason, though, it is definitely putting a stain on Gregg Popovich's legacy. As you heard in the clip, Proctor Pop told his students of lonely men and women with beards, "You can't vote for Donald Trump. You wouldn't allow him to babysit your kids. He wouldn't use proper pronouns. He would tell your children there's only 2 genders. That would stunt their development and transition. This man is dangerous." I'm not sure why Gregg thinks babysitting is a qualifier to be president, but since he wants to talk about children, let's talk about it. The insinuation here is that Johnny B. Biden and cackling Cam Harris would be qualified to babysit. I don't know about you guys, but I find that insinuation rather strange. Donald Trump has 5 children. To my knowledge, if you combine the arrest record of his kids, that number would be 0. All 5 of his children are well behaved, well respected, humble, productive members of society. Can you say the same about Johnny B. Biden? Can you say the same about cackling Cam Harris? Hell, Cam Harris has never even had kids. If Greggy is basing his vote on who raised the best children, Donnie Trump would be the easy choice. Proctor Pop also lectured the Trumper on his behavior. His behavior is so juvenile. Would you want your children to be like Trump and behave like him? Would I want my children to be successful? Would I want my children to be billionaires? Would I want my children to be good parents? Hey, Greg, the answer to all those questions, yes. Throughout his 13-minute rant, Gregg Popovich, he did not provide a single reason for you to vote for Cam Harris. Like the rest of the media and the Virgin Brigade on Reddit, the only reason they can provide is Orange Man bad. That's their only play. They tell you to vote for Cam Harris because Trump is the modern day Adolf. They tell you to vote for Cam Harris because Trump will use the military against the general population. They tell you to vote for Cam Harris because Trump is a threat to democracy. But they can't tell you one thing, one valid reason to give Cam your vote. They can't tell you one thing that she is going to do for the country. Why? Because in the past 4 months, Cam Harris hasn't provided a single reason to vote for her. Their only play is to demonize the Trumper. Have you noticed that they are getting increasingly angry? Have you noticed their increased bitterness? You know why they're bitter? They know it ain't working. Every time they demonize the Trumper, his poll numbers go up. Give me your thoughts on this. Gregg Popovich loses his mind again. He delivers a 13-minute lecture on the dangers of the Orange Man. Has Gregg Popovich ruined his legacy in the NBA, or has he stained his legacy? Let me know. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you on the main channel.